Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. Episode 126, Loud as a Whisper.
Welcome into another episode of Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. I'm John Champion.
And I'm Ken Ray. And I'm Ken Ray. And I'm Ken Ray.
Why did you do that three times? Why are there three of you?
Well, that's my chorus. I mean, there's the dry comedic host, Ken Ray. Then there's the philosophical Ken Ray. And I'm often joined by an obscure pop culture references, Ken Ray. All of whom can be heard on just about every edition of Mission Log.
Great. Today's episode is Loud as a Whisper, Episode 5, Season 2 of The Next Generation. Glad we get to do this one together, Ken, all of you, all the Kens.
All of us together. See, I thought about doing something else, but it might have been a little too ribald. Ribald?
Oh.
Ribald.
Ribbled?
Ribald.
Yes.
Might have been dirty. I guess that'd be the way to say it. I was also working on getting an audio filter, and sorry, by the way, I know it's only loud as a whisper. I'll try to boost up the level next week. I was thinking about trying to get an audio filter that only spoke to the ladies.
Oh,
you know,
yeah,
kind of like Riva has.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's got the passion version of Riva. Yes,
he does indeed.
He does.
You know what he doesn't have? He doesn't have action version.
Oh, no, he should have that.
Well,
yeah.
He should, but I guess he does a lot of talking. He's what's the line from Kevin Kline said it when they were measuring him for his little figurine for the Wild Wild West. They were looking for the Artemis Pyle action figure, and he said, "Don't you mean in action figure?"
Well played, Kevin Kline.
Yes, indeed. So that's what Riva would need as well as the in action figure. Look for that at a convention near you.
I guess, by the way, that must have been the obscure pop culture references, Ken Ray, who referenced not only the Wild Wild West movie, but an action figure from the Wild Wild West movie.
Yes, indeed. It's like that. That guy just sneaks in, says a couple of words, and he's out.
All right. Well, why don't you or one of the Kens tell people in our audience how to reach Mission Log?
Come a little bit closer, baby. I'll do that. You can find us at Facebook, Skype, and Twitter. Our handle is Mission Log Pod at all those places. You can call us 323-522-5641. That number again, 323-522-5641. You can email us, missionlog@roddenberry.com. Our show website, including discovered documents, is at missionlogpodcast.com. And remember, we may use your comments on an upcoming episode of Mission Log.
All right, Ken. Well, I guess I'll have to put on my trivia hat if I don't have a trivia avatar here of myself to do the trivia. So this will just be me doing trivia, not the other me or version of me doing trivia.
All right.
If you'll indulge me.
Whatever.
Oh, great! Now we're joined by apathetic bored Ken.
Yeah, we don't have. No, I'm just saying. You make it sound like we don't all have this thing that Riva was talking about. Maybe I'm jumping a little too far ahead into the discussion part already. But when you're like, oh no, it's just me, man.
Yeah.
Please, they're all just you, which means they're all Go ahead.
All right. So this episode was directed by Larry Shaw. It is his only credit as a Star Trek director. And as we've been mentioning here in the introduction, this is an episode that uses a theatrical construct, a theatrical device, the Greek chorus, originating sometime around or before about 700 BC. Used a lot less later, but could be considered part of the evolution of musical theater and opera, or of course that great show Herman's Head.
Yes.
You could also consider part of it.
It also featured prominently in the Woody Allen movie Mighty Aphrodite.
Sure. Yeah. There you go. So it comes back from time to time. And making up that chorus, the three people who appear as the versions of Riva, speaking for Riva, we have three actors, Randy Oglesby, Marnie Mosselman, and Leo Damian. Now, Oglesby would appear later on Deep Space Nine and Voyager in guest roles. He is a very prolific guest actor. He appeared also in the movie Independence Day. And Marnie Mosselman has been married to John Delancey since 1984. So they have been together since before they both did Star Trek in the 1980s. Now, the majority of the trivia here is going to be about the actor Howie Seago, who played Riva, because the more I looked, the more I dug, the more his story became that much more fascinating to me. So Riva, the character, is played by deaf actor Howie Seago, who actually suggested that Star Trek explore a plot with a deaf character. It was his wife, Laurie's idea. She is a Trekkie, and Seago took a meeting with Maurice Hurley in which they kicked around the idea of kind of an interstellar Henry Kissinger. Now, one of the roles that put him on the map was the 1986 staging of Ajax by Sophocles. And yes, you guessed it, that is a show originally written with a chorus in mind. The production was directed by Peter Sellers, not the actor. This is Sellars, who built a career on doing very unconventional stagings of the classics. In this production of Ajax, the drama is played out as a post-Vietnam War military trial. Now, Seago is also an accomplished director and writer, in addition to being an actor, and he was the first deaf actor to perform for the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, where he is a company member. Now, when Seago played Achilles in the National Theatre of the Deaf production of the Iliad, play-by-play, I love this quote, Ken. Newsweek said, quote, "Not since Olivier's Oedipus has an actor come so close to the primal power of Greek tragedy." That's pretty great.
Yeah.
If you're being compared in that fair light to Sir Laurence Olivier. Now, there was an idea in the script that was originally put in there and then taken out at Seago's insistence. The idea originally was that Riva would be forced to speak after the loss of his chorus, and Seago was against the idea. So this was very interesting to me, and I wanted to do a little research to figure out what the point of view was of why this would be offensive and why he would want that taken out. And I found an interview with him from the Los Angeles Times from 1989, and he said this, quote, "To resolve the dilemma when he's cut off from communication, they wanted me, his character, to speak overnight. I told them that I couldn't do that because it would perpetuate the psychological harm that's done now in forcing deaf children to use their voice whether they can or not. I didn't want hearing parents to use the show to perpetuate the oppression of their children. I grew up in an oral program where sign language was not permitted," he said. "It was repressed. Meanwhile, at home, quote, I used homemade sign language with my brothers and my friends all my life. It was only when I went to college and learned standard sign language that I started to develop as a person. I'm still angry that I was repressed all those years of my education by too much emphasis on learning to speak rather than learning. And that's still going on in some schools." So I thought that was a really interesting and important bit of perspective to understand where he's coming from and why that seemingly simple change in the show had such a profound importance to him.
It's also interesting that, I mean, there's some stuff, and I think we actually got, before we recorded this show, we got a mention from somebody on Twitter saying, is it offensive at all that he's like using fake sign language at some point, and then using American sign at other points?
Right.
And I mean, to me, it was sort of an interesting, it seemed possible that was sort of a difference. That was letting people who might know American sign or standard sign, or I don't even know the proper term, I apologize. But that might be letting people who understand that, in on sort of the feeling of isolation that he might have had. Like, the signs that he's using beforehand are completely foreign. They are in fact made up. But I mean, it's interesting to find out that that's a part of his history as well.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
And it is worth mentioning that I've seen studies with different numbers on this, but people who are deaf who read lips, I've read that anywhere from maybe a third to a half of what somebody is saying is actually comprehended by people who are reading lips. So they're really just sort of putting together a picture of what they can get by reading lips. And it's a very difficult thing to do. And even people who are really good at it, it's not a complete picture. So it's not really the most desirable or best way to communicate for somebody who is deaf. Seago says that he may get about half of what's being said by reading lips. Now, Star Trek The Next Generation Season 1 and Season 2 producer Maurice Hurley credited the writer's strike actually with the genesis of this story. So they were the writer's strike that we had already discussed was in full effect, and nobody was working on Star Trek. So here comes this call from this actor saying, I want to pitch a story. And normally that never would have been accepted. But because there was a strike going on and because there was the assumption that they were going into season 2 when the strike cleared up, Hurley was ready to hear some ideas. So we have the strike to credit with the idea that this show got made at all because they were open to the idea of hearing from people who weren't writers at the time. Now, the writing credit for the teleplay goes to Jacqueline Zambrano, who had some just really random crew credits, but this is her first major produced work as a writer. And almost immediately thereafter, she wrote a couple of episodes of the show The Equalizer, which also had a guest appearance on a different episode from Howie Seago.
A planet is torn apart, ravaged by centuries of civil war, but you know that you are in for the best time when you are spending it with the negotiating team.
Prologue. The Enterprise has been diverted from its usual poking around the galaxy. They are to pick up a negotiator, Riva, and take him to Solais V, where some people are fighting over something. Riva is said to be the best, and Captain Picard will lead the team to greet him and bring him aboard. Troy and Worf will go as well, despite Worf's discomfort. Riva negotiated a number of treaties between the Federation and the Klingon Empire. Act 1. On Ramadas 3, the away team is ignored for a bit. No one is there to greet them. Then in walks a red-headed and red-bearded fellow. He says nothing, just looks over Worf, Picard, and Troy individually. Troy identifies him as Riva. He nods, but says nothing. Finally, the away team meets 3 other people. They are Riva's 3-person chorus, and all Picard brought was a duet. It turns out that Riva is deaf. The 3-person chorus speaks for him. It's a mode of communication that's been honed over generations and centuries. The sort of egghead-looking guy is the scholar. He represents the intellect and speaks in matters of judgment, philosophy, and logic. Also, he is the dreamer, the part that longs to see the beauty beyond the truth, which is always the first duty of art. You see, save it, the Prince Charming-looking member of the chorus cuts him off. Artist, am I right? Anyway, guy number 2 says he is passion, the libido, the anarchy of lust, the romantic, the lover, the warrior, the perfect line which never wavers. The female of the bunch is that which binds all the others together, harmony, wisdom, balance. Picard is fascinated and starts addressing the members of the chorus individually, which angers Riva. Speak to me! Speak only to me! Picard apologizes, and Riva says it's all good. There was one other notable exchange between Riva and Counselor Troy. He is excited, one might say, that he will get to spend time with an empath on this trip. Also, is it my imagination or is it always passion that speaks to Counselor Troy? Act 2. The Enterprise is on its way to Solais V. On the bridge, Riva and his chorus introduce themselves to the bridge crew. While everyone's nice to everyone, Riva feels a special sort of connection with Geordi. He's blind and uses a visor in much the same way Riva has a chorus. It is a blessing to understand that we are special, each in his own way. Word. Picard says they have a briefing set up on the Solais V conflict later if Riva would like. In the meantime, he can head to his quarters if he likes. The Prince Charming member of the chorus asks if Counselor Troy might escort him. Picard says, sure, and the 3 of them, Troy, Riva, and Prince Charming, head that way. The other two chorus members hang back. They tend to be in the way at times like this. Not that much is happening. In Riva's quarters, it's hints at feelings and an invitation to dinner, talk of the similarities between their two jobs, and an indication that at some point they would like to be alone. No other voices required. At the briefing, Riva says there's no need for this briefing. The factions on Solais V have been fighting so long, it doesn't matter why they started. It's personal now, and their reasons for stopping have to be personal as well. It would be good to know why they suddenly want peace, but doesn't really matter. Riva will broker peace. He always does. Now, if you'll excuse me, I gotta get ready for dinner. At dinner, well, one wouldn't say passion is dismissed, but the guy who speaks for passion leaves the room. Troy and Riva find a way to communicate that requires no words. Lots of hand gestures, though. Seriously, they're sort of charading their way through conversation. It's cut short, though, when the factions on Solais V say they are ready to meet with Riva. Now. On the bridge, Riva tells the Solaris to knock off the fighting. They're brave warriors, but are they brave enough to talk? To listen? They knock off the fighting. Riva picks a place for them to meet on the planet, and they head that way. Act 3. Skittish members of the warring Solari factions approach. Awesome, says Riva's intellectual voice. You've taken a good first step toward peace. But one of the Solari freaks out. No! Never! He draws a laser and disintegrates Riva's chorus with one shot. His compatriot is outraged and kills the guy who killed Riva's chorus. That guy was a jerk. We really do want peace. Riker, Worf, and Riva beam out with the Solari screaming behind him that they need Riva. On board the Enterprise, Riva is obviously agitated and gesturing like crazy. No one knows what he's trying to say, though. Picard sends Data to learn as many sorts of gesture languages as he can. Riva's still losing it when Picard grabs his head, then grabs his hand, and tells him that he is not alone. We are all in this together now. Act 4. Combat is back in full effect on Solais V, and Picard worries that without Riva's help, the warring factions may hunt each other to extinction. Data's still learning sign languages. Troy says Riva is withdrawn. All of his life he's been in control. Now he has no answers, and he doesn't know what to do. His confidence is shot. Dr. Pulaski says there's nothing she can do. So glad we have her here. Data's done learning sign languages. All 5 that might be helpful. Picard says, let's go talk to Riva. With Data to translate, Riva says, wow, was I arrogant or what? Now my chorus is dead and the situation is hopeless. They were more than his interpreters. They were his friends. They were part of him, though he did not realize how much a part until now. Yeah, great, says Picard, but the fighting Solari still want you to help negotiate peace. Riva says, how can he? Picard says Data could translate, though Riva says, yeah, it's not the same. He's good, but Data cannot convey the necessary nuance. Troy says the Solari need him, though he says there is nothing he can do. He has to be taken home. In sickbay, Dr. Pulaski has some interesting news for Geordi. She can probably give him eyes. Like real, working human eyes. Like the ones Q gave him that time. There's one problem, though. It might not work. Also, if we do it and it doesn't work, your visor won't work anymore either. Geordi says he'll think about it. Troy stops by Riva's quarters. So she is going to try to settle the conflict between the Solari. He seems to think that that's crazy, but she says somebody has to. She asks for help, but he says she'd be better off without him. She points out that she's never done anything like this before. Can he at least give her some tips? He says she has to find some commonality between the two sides. Get them talking, but more importantly, get them listening. The real secret, turn disadvantage into advantage. So she asks, why can't you do that? Why can't you turn your disadvantage into an advantage? Riva is intrigued. This would give them something in common, he says. He's not saying what it is he plans to do, but it does become clear he does plan to head back to Solais V. Act 5. On the planet, Riva sets up the meeting place, then explains his plan. He'll teach the Solari sign language. It is turning a disadvantage into an advantage. While they are learning how to communicate with Riva, they'll be learning how to communicate with each other. And that is the first and most important aspect of any relationship. He'll signal when he's ready to leave. The end.
Ken, it may be a little too inside baseball to talk about it, but I imagine that you're kind of excited like I am, that when you write the show synopsis and you get down to Act 5 and you write just like 4 sentences and you go, wow, that's all it took to get through Act 5. Yeah. They didn't just save the entire story to cram into Act 5 and rush to the end. No, we just wrapped it up.
Honestly, my assumption is they have a certain number of avails that they have to sell each week, and that's the only reason there even is an Act 5. I mean, Act 5 is completely superfluous. He knows what he's going to do at the end of Act 4, and the end of Act 5, it's sort of like it's like a 3-minute and you know, I mean, it's a yeah, but you know, I like that. I especially like when you don't get to the very, like, you know, we got 3 minutes left, and it's like, how many strings do we have hanging out here?
Right.
Although honestly, there are a million strings hanging out in this episode.
Oh, there are. There are a ton of strings hanging out. Yeah.
In the beginning, like Worf doesn't want to go and see Riva. Why not? Oh well, because Riva was the one who negotiated a lot of the treaties between the Klingon Empire and the Federation.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then and should somebody ask, and this makes you angry? Why?
Yeah, I was going to say, did he not do a good job at it? Because Worf's apparently like, oh, but if Riva turns his back on me, well, his backs, it turns out, because
right.
any one of them would be able to go, hey. Although Riva might not hear that, but hopefully the gesticulation would, you know, let him know that something was up.
Yeah. Well, and even Picard says something to Worf. He's like, oh yeah, hey, I understand if you're upset about this, but. But why? Why? I mean, you guys are friends. You work together. You wouldn't be working together if it weren't for the thing. And
apparently not, though. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess so. So I really liked the 3D holographic model in Picard's office. Totally irrelevant to even hear about the other story, other than the relevance of, hey, look at this cool holographic model on Picard's desk.
See, I'm not sure I agree with you that it's totally irrelevant, actually. I don't know if it's worth, being part of the discussion, the big discussion, but there's also like a nice moment between Picard and Troy at the very end. And I love this moment. He actually says, look, I know you're an empath. I know you know that I think you do a good job, but it is important for me to say the words, good job. He also gets a little testy with Riker in the beginning. Not testy exactly, but when Riker says, I really don't like the idea of you leading this away mission. And I believe Picard's exact words were, oh, cluck, 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 number 1.
Oh, God, yeah.
And Riker has no idea what he's talking about. He's like, you're being a mother hen. Okay, all of these things to me just sort of, they keep doing little things to fill out the Picard character. And it's not one of those things like, it's not like something from Buffy the Vampire Slayer or something like that where we find out something about a character and it's going to be hugely important later. It's more like, we're going to learn more about this guy as we go. He is going to become a more fleshed out character than, say, another captain of another ship called Enterprise might have been. He's going to be a little bit less cardboard. He's going to be a bit more human. And so the idea that the captain is just sitting in his quarters doing something that has nothing to do with anything. And he even tells Riker, I mean, this is not actually a dangling thing like we talked about with Worf and that weirdness. Yeah. Or the eyes, by the way.
But
what's up with that? In the middle of this episode, it just... In fact, I am not a person who does not like Pulaski. I'm ambivalent, I guess would be the best way to say it right now. I don't remember hating her, except for the fact that she replaced Gates McFadden, which when I was 18 was sacrilege. But I'm not somebody who doesn't like her. She does not belong in this episode. She does nothing in this episode, except for maybe introduce this weird sort of, this might become a thing in a later episode for Geordi. Yeah. But it might not. I mean, we're given no indication. I mean, it's almost like they had to fill 4 minutes. Or something. I'm sorry, because I'm jumping to something else. I apologize. I know. To me, those little moments with Picard are just, sort of part of fulfilling a bigger plan for the character of just making him more human than sometimes characters on shows like this can be.
Yeah, well, I think they do that in many ways on Next Gen, and I think they do it very well in many ways on Next Gen. This is just like, Picard sitting at his desk going, I like science things. Here's the science thing on my desk. All right, get to the story.
Yeah.
Oh,
by the way, this has nothing to do with anything, number one.
Right.
Yes,
yeah. And I'd walk in like, I like science things too. I like how the planet's going around the thing. Okay, well, let's move on and talk about the other thing. Yeah.
Science!
So there's a lot of Troy moments in this episode,
yes.
But let's talk about the Klingon thing again, because the only reason that is brought up is Troy doing what she does, which is just, hey, I don't care if it embarrasses you. I'm just going to call out somebody's emotional state and make it public. And
unless you're a guest.
Yeah.
She did not do that with the outrageous Okana.
Right. We'll keep that a little bit quiet. But, unfortunately, Worf's tension had absolutely nothing to do with the story at hand, other than just this little footnote. There's the reference to Riva negotiating peace. Yeah. But really, at that moment, what you thought was going to lead into something like, oh, should we beam Worf down or not? And if we do, like you said, is he just going to leap at Riva and, stab him or something? We don't, but fortunately that didn't become a thing. But it really just seemed out of place. Troy just going like, oh, hey, I'm now going to say something, and knowing that maybe you have a little difficulty with your emotions anyway, I'm just going to spread your business to everybody in the room. Yeah,
I wonder why. You remember the episode where Worf became acting security chief? It was the one where, what is her name? Tall woman.
She with the hair.
Good at judo. Drug problem back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I can't remember. Anyway, the episode where she died.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Riker's like, all right, come on down to the planet with me, Worf, because you're a security guy and we need security. And Worf's like, yeah, but now I'm like, in charge of security, so it'd probably be better for me to be here. Mm-hmm. So it's obviously within Worf's power to not go into a situation that could be bad, right?
Right. Yeah.
I would think you send a couple of red shirts at that point, or I guess they're gold now. I would say you send a couple of gold shirts at that point. You're like, you know what? I'm going to be here doing some, security stuff.
Right.
But I'll send two of my best guys to help you. Meet another guy.
Yeah. There you go.
Which it turns out there are four of him, so maybe it's good that Worf was there making things worse. Potentially.
Yeah.
As you say, nothing even happened.
And speaking of nothing happening, I like how and by the way, that's like in quotes. I like how the prologue / teaser segment just stops in mid-stride. They beam down and there's a shot of an empty room.
Yeah, well, no, there was a shot of the statue.
But there was a shot of a statue.
Mostly it's just them standing around
and go to credits, because like somebody is looking at their watch going, if we don't run the credits now, we're not going to be able to run the credits ever.
But then they come back and they're still standing in an empty room with Picard going, nobody's even here to greet us. See, I might have actually done that before the opening credits, and God knows people have been waiting to find out how I would direct Next Gen.
Oh yeah.
But it did seem kind of weird that they're like, you just kind of go into nothing, and then you come back with what would seem like a great stopping point, except that's apparently going to be our starting point. Yeah, kind of odd.
And I thought that if Riva was so well known, like he's a really important guy, and he did this thing, and even Worf knows who he is and has mixed feelings, maybe not so mixed, but he's got feelings. Why is it so weird to everyone? Like, nobody knows that he's deaf. Nobody knows that he has a chorus that follows him around. Like, somebody in a note somewhere would say, and the guy has an entourage. So,
especially where this has been going on for generations.
Yeah.
Just like his whole line has no, doesn't have the ability to process audio.
Right. Like, it would be in the
genetic in his line.
Yeah, so you would have to put that in the writer for the contract. Just say, I need a dressing room.
Why is he going to need 4 rooms? How big is this guy? What is? He's got 3 other. I guess we could have asked when he said he needed 4 rooms. I guess
and there's a lot of dry cleaning with all the robes.
Yeah, that's on us. We should have really put 2 and 2. No, 2 and 2. There it is again. Oh well.
Yeah, yeah. I will tell you that there is a part of Riva that works very well, and that is the part that thinks that Deanna Troi is fine.
Yes.
Seriously, I mean, he makes the chorus go away.
Yes.
And as it's not passion, but it's harmony.
It's the one that brings them all together. Yeah,
harmony. And she's the one who says that they become an encumbrance when it's at moments like this.
Yeah.
And in fact, Riva, he seems just a little pissed when he has to interrupt dinner with the work that he is supposed to do.
I know. Yeah,
when work that he is actually there for comes up,
he has to stop playing with his food.
Yeah, and he's like, "Oh, I'm going to show you my displeasure by tearing this herb."
Right.
Throwing it on my plate.
Probably. I mean, we have knives and forks. Maybe I shouldn't have been picking it up off the plate anyway. I will say it's a fascinating idea, though. I like the idea that, you could just dispense with reason.
Yeah.
In situations like this. If I could have done that in my 20s, I would have been a much more entertained individual. I won't say happy necessarily, because who knows how things might have gone, but
right.
I will say I let thought get in the way of a lot of interesting times. And if I had the option of just like, I can turn off this part of my brain and this part of my brain, or even just send them out of the room. It's like, that's Riva deciding ahead of time. I know how I want this to go, so I'm not going to let little things like should I get in the way. So let me take should I and send it to another part of the ship.
Yeah.
Kind of I'm not saying that's necessarily good for people. I am saying I know at least one guy who would, maybe like to have tried it at one point.
I wish I could do that now. Yeah.
Wow, you said that out loud. Go ahead, please.
Yeah.
Continue.
So, should I, though, Ken?
No,
should I
doubt it.
Probably not. No. Riker says that Solari don't seem like likely candidates for peace, and I thought, wow, your mission is to bring the Negotiator there, and you've already given up. You're like, yeah, they're just they don't look like good candidates for peace. We should be.
They have been fighting for 1,500 years.
They have, but but now they have a reason.
Is that right? Was it 15 centuries?
I thought that's what he said. 15.
Yeah. So that's, if I'm doing my math correctly, it's 1,500 years. I would say at that point, probably not the greatest candidate for peace.
Yeah. There was a subtle look that Riker gave Worf. Did you see that?
No, I love the look that Worf gave Riker, actually.
Worf gave Riker.
Look like, what?
Yeah, right.
Right, so Riva says, listen, this is going to be tense. Don't do anything, even if provoked.
Even if provoked. And Riker gives Worf the look.
Right, but then Worf gives him the look like, what, like I'm me? I'm cool as a cucumber, dude.
Me, the guy who tried to kill you 2 episodes ago.
And the guy who's kind of upset that we're being led here by the guy who led my people into peace. But I'm cool, man. I'm fine. I don't know what you're looking at.
And speaking of provocation, I mean, it all goes perfectly fine. No problems there until the 3 members of the chorus are just evaporated in a gruesome, dramatic way.
Yeah, although, I got to say, you say it's gruesome, but it's Christmas for me. Because that's what happened to Tyrell, right?
It is, but we didn't get the screaming. That's what I missed. I missed the screaming of Captain Tyrell.
He knew it was coming, though. That's right. It's not Tyrell, it's Tyrell. Tyrell is in Blade Runner.
Right.
Tyrell is in Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, which for people who don't know is my Christmas movie. That's what I was saying. It's not like, somebody disintegrates. It's Christmas for me. It reminded me of my Christmas movie, which almost as inexplicably as Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan.
Mm-hmm. When they're on the planet, and this was a thing that I had thought of before and I thought of in other episodes, but this seemed like as good a place as any to put it. I always wondered how the transporter chief does his job, or her job, because we've met female transporter chiefs as well, when an away team announces a new number to beam up, especially when there are more people around. So, for example, how did the transporter chief know to beam up Riva, Riker, and Worf after Riva's chorus were killed and not pick up the warring Solari who were there? So think about it. You beam down and you got 6 people. 3 of them get killed, but now you got 3 new people with guns drawn. Right. And Riker's like, beam us up. And O'Brien's like, oh, yeah, okay, I see 6 bodies right there. Here you go.
That's an interesting question. I thought you were going to ask about, are they just showing off when they beam them down right next to a cliff?
Oh, yeah, right.
Because at the end of the show, they do that too. They beam down and they're like looking over what's got to be several stories of nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And they're just like standing right there on the edge. I think I might have a word with, whomever. Because he still doesn't have a name, but I think I might have not. We were going through engineering people like left, right, and center. I know you've been transporter chief for like 4 episodes now, but believe me, pal.
Yeah.
Pull that kind of stunt again. And we could have, what was that guy's name?
Argyle.
Thank you. Yes, we could have Argyle in. He's got the accent. He's got the look.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, dude, just watch yourself and put me like 3 feet further back from the edge next time.
Don't like heights. You knew that. I told you before you beam me down. I don't like heights. And similarly, how does our unnamed transporter chief know where to put the table and torches? Because they get down there and Riva tells the away team, okay, the table should be over there and the torches should be over there. And they're like, beam it down. Boom. It's in the perfect place.
Well, so, as you pointed out, we left ourselves about 45 seconds for Act 5.
We did.
I don't think they wanted to spend, although they could have padded it a little bit. Like, oh, no, I wanted it 3 feet over there. You, big guy, and you, robot.
Yeah. Right.
Get to moving.
Yeah, and at the end, you said that Riva will signal when he's ready. I'm worried about the guy. I am, because I hope that he has, I assume he's as a communicator of some sort, something. But I really feel like he needs maybe a phaser, maybe a flare gun, a sandwich, something, because he's going to be down there for months, they said.
That's
trying
true.
to teach this language. And we don't know that they're receptive to learning a new language.
We don't even know for certain that they're on their way.
No.
Did they say they were on their way? No, they said it would probably be a while after what happened last time. So there's no telling how soon that'll be. Here's what we know. The Solais can actually get in touch with the Federation or with Starfleet. Right. So if all goes well, then Riva will be able to get in touch with them. And if things don't go well, come on, it's Star Trek. It's not like we're ever coming back to this planet again.
I think I may apply for a job in Riva's chorus. I can convey the emotional nuance needed. Let me demonstrate. I am really, really happy. And now, I am really, really sad. It is the use of the modifiers that sells it.
So Ken, I stumbled over the names or the positions of the chorus a moment ago, but we have the 3. We have the dreamer / philosopher. We have passion / libido, and then holding it all together, we have harmony / wisdom. Kind of a take on id, ego, superego. We could even steer it maybe with a little more difficulty into the ethos, pathos, logos, which entirely would be appropriate for a guy like Riva, because in terms of making the argument, why do we work for peace and how will I get there? Well, how will I argue the point? Will it be the ethical argument or the logical argument? So you could certainly make that argument as well. I'm fascinated by the chorus because I kept wondering if they had lives of their own, like can they call in sick? And does simply the weight of knowing everything in Riva's head wear on them? Like there are jobs where it is hard to leave the job at work when you get home. But your job, if you are one of these chorus, is to have this sort of psychic connection to this guy all the time. And I would think that it would be incredibly difficult.
Well, to have a psychic connection with the guy all the time in public, I mean, one assumes when he's, when he's at home, like, do they cook for him too? Because he's obviously somebody of fairly high importance, right? So I don't know why. I assume he has servants. I don't see him going into the kitchen at 2 a.m. to make himself eggs. I see somebody else doing that for him, maybe. Well,
I think that's partly due to the actor here, because Howie Seago plays this with presence and Rob. So, yeah, you can sort of infer a lot of that just by his body language and his sort of being in the scene. He's great. I'm spoiling that part of the review to say he's really great in conveying that. Yeah.
What I found interesting, the part that interested me about the chorus, though, and you say, do they get days off? Mm-hmm. I actually found myself wondering about, the society on Riva's homeworld. So he's got a chorus which serves as his interpreter and voice, just as their ancestors did for his ancestors. Mm-hmm. So I hope that's what these three wanted to do, because that's that's what they're doing, apparently. Yeah. And I hope their spouses are cool with that, and with the fact that that's what their kids are going to be doing, because they apparently have spouses or mates, since they have to have kids to eventually speak and interpret for Riva's kids. Right?
Yeah.
Unless they're using artificial insemination, in which case, the spouse dodges a bullet, or
right.
or there is no spouse, whatever. But what if their kids want to do something else? Is that an option? I mean, it's not, and this is not a part of the show at all. This is not a part of the show at all. In fact, these people are nothing to Riva. They are his voice box.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah,
and then later, and it's, I like the fact that he did come around to his own hubris, to his own, hubris is the only word I can think of right now. His own being so, not aloof. What's the word? I had it. Arrogant.
Arrogant, yeah.
Comes around to his own arrogance. He's like, oh, man, they were part of me, and I didn't even realize that they were friends, but they were more than that. Mm-hmm. What is he, like 35?
Right.
Seriously? It takes him that long to realize how important these things were? I just thought they were my mouth. And it turns out they were actually people who I never bothered treating like people.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's what he says. I mean, now, for better or for worse, we only have encountered these 4 people from Riva's homeworld. Right. And we don't know what the division of labor is like, and we don't know how many people do one job versus the other.
Maybe he is cooking for them.
Maybe
that is actually possible. I should not assume that it's a sort of enforced serfdom.
Yeah,
even though that's
kind of the impression that we're given in the show.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, Dad, what if I want to say something for myself someday? Shut your mouth. Mr. Riva's been good to you. You speak for Mr. Riva, and that's it.
Right.
I mean, I got an ugly feeling off of
I did too, but you give it the benefit of the doubt and you think, okay, every member of the chorus, this is a thing that they choose to do, and when they're on the job doing that.
What makes you think so, though? Their ancestors, you see, that's the thing. It's not people have always done this. It's not that there is a guild of people that do this. Their ancestors spoke for my ancestors, he says. I mean, I don't get the sense that they're like choosing to do it at all. I mean, I'm not saying that they're against it either. I mean, they don't show up in chains,
Right.
But, I mean, it doesn't even seem like there was ever no, I want to be an architect.
Yeah.
In your spare time. In the meantime, listen quietly to nothing, because he might be saying something to you.
Well, hopefully there is a surplus of chorus. Of people who have this ability, and you could theoretically pick and choose to do that job. Well, and then hopefully leave that job at work when you go home, or when you're pushed away because it's time to have dinner with Deanna Troi.
It's business time.
That's business time. Yeah. But there is something that I thought was, maybe not the entire point of this episode, but it struck me that the struggle to express oneself, words sometimes being an inefficient way to do so, is always relevant, and it is perfectly relevant today. There are more words available now at any given time than any other time in history. You are confronted with a ton of information, and we constantly struggle over meaning and intent. Riva brings this up when he talks about data. He says, data is a fine machine, but he cannot take the place of my chorus, meaning that data can't express the emotion of something that Riva is trying to say. Although Riva expresses himself emotionally quite well, particularly in that scene after the chorus had died, I thought. But it was interesting then that Riva gets to control the conversation by forcing them to learn sign. Whether it was just on the Enterprise by getting data to learn sign, which is an easy task for him, but then he is able to control the conversation on Solaris by getting these people to speak his language. And that, of course, is the parallel for the process of negotiation that he's doing as well. And I mentioned that earlier about how Riva would have been forced to learn or forced to speak after the chorus is killed, and how they changed that in the script. And I think that makes for a much more interesting version in what we get to see here, where then he is the person who, as we say, takes a disadvantage and makes it an advantage by literally getting them to speak his language. Because once you do that, well, you've got a certain level of control there. So those were a couple of points that stuck out to me.
It's interesting that you keep saying it's a level of control, though. I mean, it really is. It's finding common ground, I think, more than it is a level of control, right? Because he's not. Look, he's never had to teach anybody sign either, as far as we know. So, I mean, this is going to be all three parties kind of meeting in a new place. And then, learning to communicate that way. He's having to learn to communicate as much as they are, because while he knows exactly what he wants to say and exactly how he wants to say it, he's going to have to figure out how to get them to know that too.
Yeah. Well, and I don't mean control as an inherently negative connotation.
Okay.
What I mean is that, well, if Riva gets to set the boundaries and set up the conversation, then the conversation will ultimately have to go through him. I mean, the words that he teaches them will be the only words that they're able to use to communicate the various sides of the story. So there is, if control sounds too negative, then maybe the correct word for it would be at least the boundary, the parameters of the conversation now have certain limits that are apparently going to be very different if it's just the Solari arguing with Solari. They have their own language for what they've been doing to each other for 15 centuries. Now you introduce somebody new who's saying, not only are we going to have this conversation, we're going to have this conversation in a new language. If you want to put that into present day Earth, pick your favorite group of warring tribes who have been at each other's throats for, give it a century, give it a millennia, give it however long you want. And they have their own way of describing what the problem is between them. They have their own way of describing why they're at war. But if you strip that away from them and have an outsider say, no, this is the way that we'll contextualize it, well, it's a pretty big leap of faith to think that they would actually listen to that and follow along with it. But it is an interesting approach to the problem to say we're going to redefine how we talk about the conflict and redefine then how we achieve a peace. Because hopefully that resolution then sounds a lot less like a compromise that hurts one of those groups in the process. It takes that outsider to redefine it.
I got to say, I like the simplicity with which Riva views their war, actually. I mean, because I don't know. Maybe it is the whole disadvantage to advantage thing where they've got this new problem that they have to figure out, which is how they're going to communicate with this guy, because they believe he's got some kind of magic. I mean, it's not a huge leap of faith at this point to say that, they're going to find their way to peace, because they have called for peace. They have asked for the guy that they think can do this. Well, if they think that there's a guy who can do it, then it's pretty much done. I mean, what they got to go through now is the steps, but they are at a place where they want peace, and they want this guy who they think has some incredible peacemaking ability. And all he's really got is a different way to look at it, and then a way to get them to look at it a different way as well. I'm huge into his simplicity of the whole thing, where they're like, oh, so here's how the war started on the Enterprise. They're like, so here's how the war started. He's like, yeah, save it. It doesn't matter how the war started, because this has been going on for 1,500 years now. It does not matter how the war started. And Riker says it's personal. And Riva says, right. So we have to make their reason to stop personal as well. Wouldn't it be neat if we could just go ahead and get to that point in a lot of the wars that we have currently? A lot of the fighting that we have currently, I mean, it may be about, well, a long time ago, this guy did this and that guy did that and whatever. And that's not really what it's about anymore. It's really just about, I hate you, and I have hated you for so long, and I'm going to keep hating you until I can kill you and everybody just like you. And, the person on the other side is like, funny story. Me too, you. I mean, it's not about what it was about anymore. It's about hate. And I love the fact that Riva is able to, basically say, look, okay, what was it about? Oh, was it about a piece of land? Was it a relic? Right. Or was it a cape? Did somebody call somebody something? It's not about that anymore. It's just about the fact that they are fighting. They've been fighting so long, they don't know how to not fight, and they need to stop. And I really loved that simplicity of the whole thing because, I mean, if you could boil it down to that simplicity in a bunch of other situations, then you might actually be able to go, wow, this is dumb. But try that at the UN. try that at the UN, just getting up on stage and going, hey, you know what's stupid? This. So knock it off.
One might even say that it's very elementary. And I would, even, and especially for a guy like Picard, who I think has already found ways to talk his way to peace amongst others. He's very good at this, and even though he says at the very beginning that their whole job is to stay out of it, Picard, maybe in a different season, in a different story, he would be the guy making this kind of negotiation using this exact same tactic. Let's talk about another tactic here, because I'm curious to hear your take on it. Was Deanna just manipulating Riva by saying that she will take over the peace negotiation? She's the one who gives him the pep talk. Why can't you do that? Why can't you turn your disadvantage into an advantage? And I wondered if this was going to be a thing. She would actually be the one to try to be the negotiator now if Riva has given up and it says, I want to go home. Or was this just playing him?
If she was playing him, then it was done very subtly, it was done very subtly in the script. Mm-hmm. I didn't get the sense, sometimes in TV shows or in movies, somebody will be trying to trick somebody into doing something, and then you'll get sort of a knowing look afterwards. Right. Or you'll get I thought you'd, or anything like that. I got the sense that she was really desperate. And because she says, look, I'm going to go down there and do this. And Riva's like, well, that's dumb. And she's like, well, somebody has to. Mm-hmm. And he's like, he starts sort of giving her little tips every now and then. And then I actually felt her level of frustration at the task that was now before her ratcheting up. I didn't get a sense of her trying to trick him into that. Now, maybe she's just that good and she just played it that close to the vest. But honestly, my feeling was that, no, she was ready to do it. She was ready to go down and try to negotiate that. And it was only in having the discussion that Riva actually came to it himself, which, I mean, she was happy to have happen. Yeah. But I didn't think she was playing him. I thought she was really going to go down there and look, they're about to kill each other anyway. How much worse can it be? Except she might die, but
Yeah. I felt that way the first time I watched it, that this was all on the level. Mm-hmm. And maybe it was after 2 or 3 times watching it that I thought, well, is there the possibility of another layer to this, of her coming to him, knowing that he has feelings for her, knowing that they've had this very interesting emotional connection? Mm-hmm. Is this just another way to hopefully get him to participate? He participates to the extent that he is going to give her advice, but then she sort of lets him talk himself into being the person to go back to his job and carry out the negotiation.
You can make the case either way, but where there was no wink at the camera, or where there was no "I told you so," I honestly think you can make the case either way. Yeah, there's no evidence that it's either one.
And I'm glad for that, because that's something that in TV and film, anybody who lies or anybody who is manipulating somebody else, it is done with a wink to the camera. Right. And people in real life are very good liars. So it's almost more interesting to see something played a little more realistically.
I feel like we're learning more about you this episode than we're learning about Star Trek, honestly. I wish I could turn off this thing, and people lie like dogs really well. And
No. People are, you know what I'm saying? People are good at lying. If you were...
Yes.
Yeah. Whereas in a movie or in a TV show, the minute somebody has to tell a lie, they get all flustered and they indicate to the audience, and now I'm telling a lie, and the person that they are telling the lie to has no idea.
Yeah, you get this whole "don't throw me in the briar patch" moment, right? Mm-hmm. Which is not, generally speaking. Yes, one of the horrible failings of Man of Steel. But, we can talk about that in our Man of Steel podcast coming up in 2053.
Oh, I can't wait.
Suddenly lacking intellect, passion, and harmony, there may still be things for Riva to tell us. Let us see what John and Ken took away.
Well, here it is, that part of the show where we are almost out of show. But before we run out of the show, we try to figure out what the messages, morals, and meanings of a given episode are, preferably the episode we were just talking about, and whether or not the whole thing stands the test of time. John Champion, Loud as a Whisper. Is this an episode that holds up as far as you're concerned?
I hate saying what I'm about to say.
Wow.
Because
yeah,
the word interesting is the kiss of death.
Why?
Because it's the least committal word that you can say about a show or a play or a movie or anything or a piece of art. Hey, how did you like it? It was interesting.
Well,
you know,
it's better than sucked.
Yeah. Well, it could have sucked in new and interesting ways, Ken.
I'm okay with that, though. I mean, seriously, and forgive me, I'm just going to keep referencing other movies all throughout. I walked out of the movie School Days hating it. The first time I saw it, I walked out of the movie School Days absolutely hating it. And a week later, a friend of mine and I were still talking about it. Yeah. And like every time we saw each other, we were still talking about the movie. So first of all, I came to respect it a lot more once I realized we can't talk about anything else. But the other thing is, if it's interesting, then even if you don't like it, it's still, giving you something to do, which is kind of neat.
And this episode didn't really drag up a strong reaction from me one way or the other of loving it or hating it. And I think that's the problem. So then I'm left back with interesting. And I think this is a show with a lot of interesting ideas, and it's a show with very interesting characters and an interesting premise. But at the end of the day, I don't think it holds up as a particularly great episode. And I mean that it's a not great episode in terms of being incredibly well done or incredibly poorly done. We could make fun all day of episodes of Star Trek that we didn't like. This is not an episode that I didn't like, but it's also not an episode that I loved. So I'm just sort of stuck right in the middle thinking, well, I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. I found interesting ideas in it, and I certainly liked the actor in it. But I am firmly on the fence about whether or not it holds up and whether or not I liked it as a show. I think, to be generous, I would have to say, sure, it's not bad, but it's just not great. And they didn't do anything that I thought was incredibly stupid or offensive along the way. Sometimes Star Trek will do something you just, man, why did they do that dumb thing like put a lawyer in a shower curtain and then just ruin my whole experience of the moment. But there was no lawyer in a shower curtain in this. No. So how do you feel, Ken?
It's fine. I mean, and that really is, I mean, it's fine. I don't want to fault an episode for not being one of the best episodes ever. So like when you say it's not awful, but it's not great, well, I mean, that leaves you with fine, which I think it is. I mean, as far as messages and things like that, I mean, I like the diversity message in the whole thing. Just because someone is deaf doesn't mean that they can't do stuff. In Earth's history, the line of Hanover, where hemophiliacs, they ruled. There's a planet where, the people with no limbs rule. Disability doesn't necessarily mean inability is a possible message there. And so it gives you that. And then I like his whole, I don't want to say dumbing down of war, but I mean, I like his whole dumbing down of war, right? It's not about who did this and what this is and what this means today and all of that. It's really about you don't like him, and now you both realize you're on the verge of extinction. You need to find a way out of it. So there's your way out of it. Okay, good. Yay. So, I mean, it's got interesting messages, none delivered in the same, with the same gravitas or with the same, fervor as, let's say, the Corbomite maneuver, or even an episode that you absolutely hated. The one with the flag.
Shall lead.
No, I love
Omega Glory.
Omega Glory. Thank you.
Yeah.
One day I will get you. I have to write the Gorgon's book. That's what I have to do. I have to write the Gorgon's book, and you'll see the beauty of his messaging in that horrible horrible episode.
If you're wearing a shower curtain when you deliver it to me, or do a dramatic reading from it, even better.
I'm thinking about the next time we see each other. I'm just saying. So it's fine. It's not bad. Does it hold up? Yes. Is it stellar? No. Is it terrible? No. Now, forgive me, I kind of jumped. I mean, I used some of the messages in it to maybe justify it being fine. Were there other messages that you picked up or that you want to make sure that people see?
Yeah, there was a thing in here that kind of goes along with what you were hitting on with a disability, not necessarily meaning inability. And if you extrapolate that out to every individual that we're presented with here, there's this message about being who you are, but also exceeding who you are. We take Riva, who's great, who has the rug pulled out from under him. He loses his confidence. And there's kind of the understanding that, yeah, we get that. Picard, in that terrific moment, grabs him and says, look, we're in this together. We understand what's going on, but we will help you. And you can do this. You can overcome this problem that you're having right now. And I don't mean the problem being the disability, but the problem being the blow to his confidence that he just took. You quoted the line earlier in your recap. It is a blessing to realize we are special, each in his own way. Might sound a little cheesy, might sound like something you get on a greeting card, but it works very well here. Turning disadvantage into advantage. Again, this goes back to the first line that I had. Riva has seemingly had so much taken away from him, but he overcomes that. He finds a new way to redefine the problem to make it a lot less of a problem. And then let's talk about that just a little bit, the parallel between Riva's disability and Geordi's, which I found interesting, if a little ham-fisted, the way it played out. I liked the conversation between Geordi and Pulaski, even if this was, as you saw it, just an out-of-place thing for Pulaski to be doing in this episode. It's like they just were, as you said, short a scene and kind of stuck one in there. But I thought it raised some interesting ethical questions, the implications of fixing Geordi's eyes. Geordi is somebody who, even though he has expressed discomfort and problems with his visor, he's a guy who likes who he is. And he is used to the idea of the visor being the way he sees the world. We even got those shots, remember, last season where he's walking through the damaged ship, sending that video feed back to the Enterprise. We get to see the world the way that he does. So what if you take that away from him and just say, okay, well, now you're normal, big quotes around normal. Now you're like everybody else, but now there's something that isn't making you the way that you defined yourself.
Yeah, but why are you okay with that in this episode? I mean, we got a little hint of something with Worf a couple of episodes ago. I think it was the one where you thought, it was the thing on the holodeck with Worf and Riker, and you thought, wow, this is going to lead to something, and it doesn't. Yeah. That at least was more in context than this. I mean, it's almost like they had to fill 4 minutes, or they had to give Diana Muldaur something to do with this episode. I mean, it was just, I'm not saying it's not a good discussion. I'm not saying it's not an important discussion, but it's like somebody dropped a Post-it note in somebody else's book. I mean, it comes out of nowhere. It goes back to nowhere, it seems to me. Now, again, this may be something that will come up in later episodes, but it was just, I don't know why this happened here. I'm not saying I don't know why it happened. I'm saying I don't know why it happened here.
Yeah, for dramatic purposes, it doesn't fit. But I think for the purpose of the character, I mean, here we have our A-plot with our guest star, who is a character with a disability, and we're showing throughout the show how even through what is seemingly a disability, and then compounding that problem by taking away his way of expressing himself for centuries, apparently, taking that away, now he's got a new thing to overcome, a new thing to do. Geordi, well, he's presented with not the same idea necessarily of taking away his vision, but here's a different way then to look at your seeming disability, and he gets to contemplate that.
Okay, maybe my problem is, and I think I just hit on it with what you just said. You said we've got an A plot.
Yeah.
but you never said we got a B plot, and the reason is because we don't. What we've got is an A plot, and then we've got like a bunch of stuff that kind of happens, that gets mentioned, right? Like, oh, well, Worf, you apparently have a problem with there being peace between the Klingons and the Federation. But let's not talk about that. Picard, you got this science thing going on, and that has nothing to do with anything. And Geordi, that really doesn't have anything to do with anything. Yeah. I mean, there's the B plot is maybe what's going on with the Solais, but even they're part of the A plot.
Yeah.
But at least they do tie in somehow. Maybe that's the B plot, but then you've still got A plot, B plot, and how many minutes do we have left? Let's see. Can you make a model of a thing with a thing and going around a thing? Okay, good. That's a minute. I don't know. I mean, it's and honestly, we're spending a lot of time talking about it that it doesn't deserve. I mean, it's not bad. It's just weird.
Yeah.
I guess that would be the best way to put it. But that's true of like so much of the other stuff that we've hit on in this episode, it seems. And yet it's fine.
Yeah. All right. So from a fine episode to another fine episode, we hope, or maybe great, or maybe terrible. We'll find out when we go to The Schizoid Man.
Some of the music for Mission Log provided by Warp 11, online at warp11.com, and from the album Messages, by Key Theory, free to download at kitheory.com. Mission Log is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment, executive producer Rod Roddenberry. Find out more at roddenberry.com. For more exciting Star Trek podcasts, check out Trek FM, online at trek.fm. And finally, for the latest in Star Trek news and discussion, be sure to visit trekmovie.com. And transmission.